Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. I always like to begin with a silly networking story. Today's story is about building your personal network with people from volunteer organizations that you've been involved with. Over the past 30 years, I've been intentional about connecting with and staying in touch with fellow members of Kappa Delta Rho fraternity. Their stories and the success they've achieved across the United States and around the world always amazes me. And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in, Tony Pietrocola. Tony is president of Agile Blue in Cleveland, Ohio. While Tony and I were members of Kappa Delta Rho at different times, we share a common love of Kappa Delta Rho fraternity and the University of Toledo. Tony, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us on the Rocket Networker podcast.
Rick, thanks for having me. I am thrilled to be here. So thanks so much.
Well, let's start off. How are things in Cleveland, Ohio?
Man, Cleveland. Well, we got two teams in the playoffs right now. Or we got the Cavs in the playoffs. You got the Indians playing like a playoff team. So things are good from a sports perspective. Business perspective, Cleveland kind of gets along. We don't do anything amazing like you see happening in Columbus, which sometimes don't let anybody know, but I get a little jealous of what they have going down there. But, oh man, they got some fantastic things happening. But, I love Cleveland. Cleveland's got a lot of amazing things happening. We just sometimes take a little bit more time to get there, but we're working hard to get there.
Well, hey, we'll talk a little bit about Agile Blue, and my sense is that you and your partners there are doing some good things, and you're part of that future for Cleveland and the technology world and the fun things. So we'll look forward to catching up on that here in a few minutes. Tony, the Rocket Networker podcast, what we focus on is conversations around what I call the threads of connectivity, the little things that bring us together in life beyond business, right? We've all got a day job. We've all got to do work. But at the end of the day, our relationships in business and in life come from the little things, our hometown, our college experience, our high school, our military, the things we volunteer in. Those are the things that bring us together and bond us together. So with that in mind, let's step back in time. So what's your hometown?
From Cleveland originally. So I am in the place that I was born in.
Did you grow up right in Cleveland proper or out in one of the suburbs?
Yeah, no. I grew up in what we used to call back then the Italian hood. So my dad came from Italy, right? And okay. Back then, the neighborhood I grew up on, believe it or not, the school I went to was called St. Rocco's. Like, come on, They're just amazed people weren't boxers leaving that school, with that name. Right. But that was the little Italian area of Cleveland. It's not anymore, but that's where I grew up. And probably it's why I act the way I act these days.
So you mentioned your dad. Talk a little bit about family. Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got one brother, and he's still in the Cleveland area as well. It was interesting having a parent. And by the way, my mom was amazing too, but she was second generation Italian. She was born here. My dad being born somewhere else and coming here was interesting to have that mix of cultures and how those things kind of came together, right? So when you think about somebody coming over from war-torn Italy, because that's when my dad came over after World War II, this place looked like just diamonds and gold and it was just it's just completely lush to everybody, right? And it is, it's the American dream. So no, we had a great upbringing. You got some turbulence. We've all had turbulence. Maybe my kids don't have as much turbulence. I wish they did a little bit, but yeah, it all worked out amazing.
What's your favorite memory of the neighborhood?
Well, so, the favorite, listen, I mean, you think about it, was the Italian hood, right? The whole point was who is the cooler guy? Who's the toughest guy? You think about the Italian mindset sometimes, the American Italian mindset. Not real Italians back in Italy, right? But you think about that mindset, and it's all about being, masculine and those types of things. So, who's the best baseball player? The toughest guy who can do this? All those little things. So that's the memory, and I tell you what, it makes you very competitive as a person. And I don't really keep in touch with too many folks there. I'm not a huge Facebook person, but some of those folks are on Facebook. And you still see it in the personalities today. Like you got some business owners like, hey, we're the best dry cleaners in the city. Like, how'd you get that title? Like, did somebody just say you're the best dry cleaners? But that's that mentality, I think, of that area and those great people who work very hard to build what they have.
So let's talk about high school a little bit. Did you go to high school?
Yeah, I graduated from Strongsville High School, which is a suburb of Cleveland. Played football there, typical stuff. You know what I mean? Excellent football team. Excellent sports all around. So it was a pretty big suburb. It's enormous now. If those of you who are listening have heard of Strongsville, so it was a regular upbringing. Nothing crazy when I got to high school. The Rocco stuff was gone, still inbred in me. But you can't take that macho stuff to a high school because there's always someone tougher. There's always somebody more competitive. And in football, even though you think you were so fantastic, there's always someone just a little bit faster, a little bit stronger, right?
Did you do any other student organizations or things of that nature in high school, or were you pretty much just football?
No, I played sports. Football was the most important one. When it comes to events, I was in the Young Republicans Club, believe it or not making a political statement on this podcast, but something tells me the parties back then weren't like they are today. So it doesn't matter what you were, probably somewhere in the center of where things are today. But that was fun, right? And it was right at the end of Bush, the first term coming into Clinton. So you had all this new dynamic going. So it was actually a really fun club to be part of.
So that was in your high school years. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So when let's go to your senior year, kind of junior year, senior year, and you're starting to think about life after high school. What was going through your mind your senior year?
Yeah. So I had my favorite movie at the time, even though it came out many years earlier, was Wall Street. Gordon Gekko, Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen, great movie. In fact, this is going to sound sad, but I came back from Dubai this past week, and it's a long flight, and I happened to watch Wall Street on the flight back. And I said to myself way back then, I'm going to be a stockbroker. I want to be just like Charlie Sheen, right? Bud Fox. So I want to go to school, be a finance major, work on Wall Street, all that stuff. I became a finance major, but I didn't end up working on Wall Street. Long story, I got into technology, but that's what I wanted to do. And again, thought I was good enough to play football. Coach Amstutz had recruited our class to come in. And I had the opportunity to try and play. But again, once you get there, even Toledo, people look at the MAC. There are fantastic. In fact, Kenyon Mitchell just drafted in the first round, our second first-round pick ever, way back to my freshman year when Dan Williams was selected by the Denver Broncos. So that's great that Toledo had that. And a bunch of kids signed as free, undrafted free agents too. So that's great to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the college game is definitely different, right? And same with the NFL. You get to the next level, everybody's fast. Everybody's quick. Everybody's smart.
Oh.
Well, let's back up. How did you pick Toledo over other colleges?
So a couple of things. I think Toledo's campus, even to this day, even though it's very different from what it was in 1992, is a beautiful campus. It really is. I think people are shocked when they see Toledo, number one. Number two, I had the opportunity to try out for the team. So that was a big thing. And I was also looking at Cincinnati, but Toledo had just come off Saban being coach. He went to the Browns, brought in Pinkel. So there was a great legacy there you wanted to try to become part of. And then, Rick, Nettie's milkshakes. I mean, come on. I mean, where are you going to find Nettie's milkshake? That thing's fantastic. I'm still convinced to this day they sprinkle crack cocaine in the milkshake. Once you have one, you need like 9.
You got to have a bunch of them. You get hungry.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. So, all right. So you get to Toledo, you walk on the team. What was that like? What was you talk a little bit about your freshman year and kind of orienting now to college? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, again, I thought I was fast. Not even close. I thought I was strong. Not even close. In fact, I'll give you a tidbit. My freshman year, I did the least amount of bench presses with 225 during that tryout period. So I'll never forget that. And to this day, it sticks in my mind. So I'm about to turn 50. But every Monday when I do chest, I still have to go over that number. Now, there'll be one day when I won't, and then I'll really feel bad about myself. But that number sticks in my head to this day.
That's your goal. It's embedded inside you. That's classic. All right. So football, it sounds like, wasn't your thing then in college. You kind of figured that out freshman year and that. How did your college experience evolve from there? Okay, football's kind of now over. Now what? Like, what did you do besides academics? Did you get involved?
Yeah, I totally got involved. I mean, look, at the end of the day, my roommates next to me in the academic center, that was the first year in the dorm. Somebody knew something in a fraternity or knew someone in a fraternity. And he's like, hey, we're going to roll over there for Rush. I'm like, I don't need a fraternity. Who needs fraternity? You can find there's a million guys, a million women. Let's party. Let's have some fun. But when I first I only went to one fraternity in Kappa Delta Rho, like you mentioned. And man, the people I met were just amazing. And the house to me back then, although it looks a little beat up these days, it's getting older.
Now it's all cleaned
Not
up.
just KDR, they all look older, right? All of them.
Yeah. Yeah, on the outside, they look old for sure.
Totally, just look older, but that's great. That's not a bad thing. But back then, to me, like this is where I want to be and live, and the people were great, and my close friends from the dorm were going to join, so it became that. And once you get involved with Kappa Delta Rho, you're not done. There's so many folks doing all kinds of organizations that they're going to get you into, and then again, back to your major, it's going to also put you in some different areas as well. So, I mean, I got very involved. Football became a thing of the past going into sophomore year. And, look, I'm not smart enough to do academics and football. So thank God I focused on academics and really focused on that stuff. But being part of fraternity was great because those friends I made and the experiences were just, I mean, come on, you're never going to be able to replace those.
That's true. All right. So talk about some of these other student groups. Like what types of other things did you get involved with?
Yeah, I got into some Greek life stuff. So outside of KDR, there was the Greek life stuff that got into. Continued the Young Republicans Club, right? I mean, so why not, right? That was something that I continued. There was also my goodness, I'm screwing up the name, but there was a club for finance kids. There was like a stock pickers game back then, which was fun because back then it was still on. It wasn't on decimal points; it was on fractions, and you can only see your quote in the paper every morning. Like you had to wait to get out, and tally. And by the way, who the hell wants to tally fractions in the morning? The decimal point was so easy when it came out. So, it was fun stuff.
That's great. Good memories. All right. So now you're going through you shift gears from football. You're getting involved on campus. You're having a good college experience. You're starting to get now to junior and senior of college. All right. So now you're thinking about, I got to go out here and get a job. So talk us through that a little, or take us through that a little bit. What were you thinking there?
Well, again, really wanted to be in a broker in Wall Street. And I did do 2 years of an internship at the old Dean Witter, which is eventually became Morgan Stanley, downtown Toledo. And then I got to do one in Cleveland, those internships. And it was I'd still love to be a broker and a financial advisor, which my brother did become. But I'm so old. This is when the internet was just starting to get going, 94, 95, 96. And I really became a techie, not because I was a computer science major. I just thought it was really cool stuff. And Apple was recruiting. And back then, people think, oh, Apple, that's so damn cool. No, back then, Apple was awful. We had $150 million in the bank back then, literally 90 days of cash to go out of business. Think about that. 90 days. Steve Jobs had just come back in September of 97. And he didn't bring me back. He didn't bring me there, but I took a job there and it launched my career in the tech.
That's kind of cool. Now, where were you at then? Were you in Cleveland or did you go out west or where were you with that?
Yep. I was in Cleveland for a few, maybe 4 or 5 months after graduating. And then I had to move to Chicago. So I was a systems engineer. So I moved to Chicago first, which was single guy in Chicago. Pretty fantastic stuff. We had a lot of fun there. And then my job, I traveled a ton. So I was back and forth to Cupertino. But my job was on the higher ed side. So I had colleges in the Midwest that were big spenders with Apple, which big spenders meant they had like a Mac lab. That was it, because back then Mac wasn't really cool, right? It was all PCs. Right. But anyway, so yeah, Chicago, San Francisco, or Cupertino, I should say, and then eventually back to Cleveland.
So now you're living that dream, right? You're living in the big city in Chicago. You're having fun flying back and forth. Your career's off the ground. Apple. You move back to Cleveland. So take us from there. Where do you go from Apple?
Moved back to Cleveland to start a company, my first company. So, I think anybody who leaves Apple is entrepreneurial. It's just part of the culture. And then when you see Steve Jobs, it's just, he's basically daring you not to go create a company, right? So we did. Right. So I came back to Cleveland, joined with some folks, and I started my first company, which was called 10th Floor. We weren't on the 10th floor. We were on the second floor. And we were on the second floor of an 8-story building in downtown Cleveland. We didn't get our mail for the first 2 months. And we're like, what the hell? There might not be invoices coming in, but I know there's bills to be paid. Went to the thing and went to the post office, and they said the mailman comes back every day because he's looking for the 10th floor. doesn't realize you guys are named 10th floor on the second floor. That's a true story. So
That's
back
great.
then, kind of learn all these things. Do you even get mail these days? We don't even get mail anymore.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, we started that first company, and what we did is we built websites and e-commerce websites back in 2001.
Back when you had to code them hard, right?
Literally had to code them. Now, like you just said the other day, you threw up a website in like a day. That used to be like 6 months worth of work.
Yeah, you just drag and drop, and even a 60-year-old guy like me can whip a website up in an hour and a half, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally.
Back then, you had to code it in; it would be $50,000 minimum, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it would, or hopefully more.
Yeah, exactly, right. All right, so you break in. Now you're a high tech guy using your 286 desktop. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
The older generation will know the 286 and the 386, right?
totally.
All right, so now you're a tech guy. You're in Cleveland. You're living the dream. You're an entrepreneur. What happens to that business?
We grew the business for about 6 years, and then we were acquired. A publicly traded company called Bridgeline Digital out of Boston, run by a guy by the name of Thomas Massey, and he and I still keep in touch. Unfortunately, he's from Detroit and happens to be a Michigan fan. So I hate him right now, and I've hated him over the last couple of years because I'm also a Buckeye fan. I have a daughter that goes to Ohio State as well. But he was a great guy. They acquired our company, and I became part of Bridgeline then as executive vice president of global sales for, 5 years after they bought us. But being publicly traded was a lot different. We went public at the end of 7, going into 08, which became obviously the biggest financial crisis of, since the Great Depression. Try running a public company at that time.
Yeah, it's tough stuff. Now, did you move, or were you able to stay in Cleveland?
No, physically we stayed in Cleveland, but I had, about 83 billion miles racked up for everywhere I had to fly to. So in fact, also commuting, a little bit to Boston when need be. Stayed in Cleveland, but yeah, traveled a lot.
All right. So now you sell the company, you stay 5-6 years, you're traveling all over the place. What happens next? Did you retire, or what'd you do?
Yeah. No, I hope to never retire, actually. That's a goal of mine. If it works for Warren Buffett, why not? I don't know what I would do. And I'm sure, Rick, about 9 people would have a hitman looking for me if I didn't have an office to go into. So, and 3 of those people are my family. So, that's not an option. After Bridgeline, there's a very large mortgage bank in town called Union Home Mortgage. So it's a national company, done great. They wanted to open up a retail division to go after Quicken Loans. It was called Quicken before it became Rocket, right? Which it is now.
Right.
And I led vloan.com as the first president of vloan for a little over 3 years, before realizing the mortgage industry is a very interesting industry. Interesting in many ways, right? It's the lifeblood of the economy, and it's the American dream, but it's a very technical, interesting industry with a lot of nuance to it. So, ran it for 3 years, got it off the ground, which was great. And then realized I was probably a little bit outside of it wasn't a tech company at the end of the day. It was more of a mortgage company, even though we wanted it to be a tech company. People always say that they're a tech company and they sell ice cream. Or today, the big thing is, hey, we're an AI company. Like, you're dry cleaners. Like, I love you. I need you. But how are you an AI company? Everybody wants to be something they're not. And at the end of the day, we were a mortgage company. I'm not a mortgage guy, right? So after 3 great years getting the business off the ground, I left to start Agile Blue, back in 2019, where I am now.
Gotcha. Talk about Agile Blue. Like, where did that come from? Was that an idea out of the blue, or do you get some partners, or?
I like what you did there with the blue. Nice. Yes, have a great business partner, someone I've known for about 20 years, Joe Marquette. My first business and the business he currently had as a business, we used to partner together, and we met, breakfast, lunch, something like that, maybe even drinks. I don't remember. But we talked about the state of cybersecurity and where the market was going, and there was a gap in what we do. So we started a company called Agile Blue to address that gap, and that's what we're doing now. And we're building this company up, to the best of our abilities.
What's the short version about the business?
Yeah, no. We are a software platform company, so it's a cloud platform, and what we do, we use AI to automate what's called the Security Operations Center. So companies have security operations that are 24/7 monitoring for a potential cyber attack. Well, we have a platform that does that. And then we have a 24/7 team that can also assist our customers. So that's what we do. And we're at the forefront of trying to stop some of these cyber attacks to our customers.
I'm with you, by the way, about retiring. I have no plans to retire. It's just too much fun to be had out there, and I just enjoy what I do, like you do. So we share that bond. But like, where do you see the future at? What do you think's next? What's coming up?
Look, we're going to grow Agile Blue to, till we reach what we want to reach, whatever those goals might be longer term. I don't know. Maybe we become acquisitive. Maybe it goes the opposite way. You never know with business. I had this one philosophy: if you create a company that does great things, that works really, really hard, you're creating a valuable company, and that company could be valuable for you to keep growing, or it could be valuable for someone else. So we're going to continue to grow. But I will tell you this: down the road, things, this AI stuff is very interesting. I mean, we built our company on it. It's very important to us, but it's revolutionizing a lot. So there's going to be a lot of things to do in it, and I'm interested to see it. I got to tell you, I'm also really interested in things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as well. It's a fascinating thing. So I could definitely see down the road potentially getting involved in something there. We'll see. We have a lot of work to do at Agile Blue, though, and that is extraordinarily exciting.
Yeah, that's great. That's exciting stuff. The tech world, when you get that bug, no matter what age you're at, when you get the bug, it just pulls you in. It's never ending.
Totally.
There's, for people that have minds that are inquisitive, it's like a narcotic to us. It just pulls us into reading about it and studying it and messing with it. And it's so overwhelming. That's the beauty of it. Everybody's like, well, it's so much to keep up with. I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's what makes it exciting. It keeps the mind fresh and vibrant. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
And I'll tell you this, we got customers all over the world. And when you talk to people all over the world, they are commonly bonded in the business world by technology, right? Like financial stuff is different and healthcare is way different, right? But when it comes to tech, we're all looking to make our businesses more efficient. What can we automate? Where can we bring in more innovation? And people are all driving to those top, and of course, cyber, how do we protect our stuff? Because there's a lot of bad people trying to take that stuff down, right? So I can tell you, tech does seem to bind a lot of countries and different businesses all over the world.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, so let's talk about your entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm interested because you kind of got this whole entrepreneurial thing going, and then you had this dream about Wall Street and investing and all that stuff. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, do you get involved in investing yourself?
So yeah, I've definitely gotten involved with some venture funds, and there were some organizations in Cleveland as well. Quicken Loans actually started an accelerator in Cleveland called Bizdom many years ago, and got involved in that, did some investing in some really interesting organizations there. Like all venture investing, you got to invest in probably 10 of them to hit, right?
Right.
But, those things allow people like me, older, experienced, lots of bad moves and mistakes, to hopefully help those guys and young ladies not make those mistakes and really grow their businesses. So, those are fantastic things. And my daughter, she's a finance major at Ohio State. I have a very big meeting tomorrow in Columbus, and she's going to go with me. She's going to go with me and just see, a meeting, a real life meeting. Look, Ohio State's great. Their finance program is amazing. Fisher Business College is great. So from a structural perspective, anybody can learn. But getting in the trenches, how do people talk in meetings? What do they talk about? How they structure things, how they start negotiating. These are things that nobody sees unless you have your butt in the seat, right? So I think we need to do more of those things. So I love those types of things that you can help at accelerators, at those types of places. And then in real life, right?
Right. It's interesting here in Northwest Ohio, there's a lot of discussion around why Northwest Ohio is not really able to grow businesses. And my point in that has been, and for many, many years, is what you just said. It's the accelerator environment where we don't have that rapid, intense experts coming from around the world that have a tie, like you, to Toledo in some way, to help with those entrepreneurs. The accelerator concept is something desperately missing from Northwest Ohio. So it's great to see that you're involved with it in Cleveland, and that you're involved with your daughter in that, and you're drawing your children into that. That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, well, they're my retirement plan, Rick. So I got to make sure that I don't end up in a home somewhere.
So let's segue into your family. You mentioned your Ohio State daughter and your wife, and then so talk a little bit about that. Where'd you meet your wife at?
University of Toledo. Look at that.
Oh, is that right?
She was in a sorority called AOPI, which is Alpha Omicron Pi, and being a guy in the fraternity, I'm sure I said a lot of stupid things to a lot of people, and one of the stupid things seemed to resonate with someone. So that's how we got together at Toledo. She was, you can edit this part out, right? She's a little older than me. So she graduated a few years ahead of me, but we still kept in touch through all that, and it ended up working out.
So now, all right. So my wife's a Kyle, by the way.
Okay,
And
there you go.
we're high school sweethearts, but we dated through college too. So we've got that whole fraternity sorority bond thing going on, and kind of interesting. My son is a member of Kappa Delta Rho, our fraternity, and my daughter joined my wife's sorority. She's a Kyle.
That's
So
pretty
we're,
cool.
yeah, it's kind of neat. They came from New Jersey to attend the University of Toledo, and they became our brother and our sister. So that's kind of neat, in the family.
Very cool.
So,
That's a nice dynamic. And do you remember Tim Voida he was a couple years older than me, a couple years younger than you.
yes.
Him and his daughter and my daughter are in the same sorority. They met there on a whim. It's not like they knew each other. And then Tim and I were able to connect and go do a bar crawl together. They're KDs down at Ohio State, which was great to relive some old glories with, Tim, who I haven't seen, my God, in 30 years. It's interesting.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's the bonds of getting involved in any student organization. We think that that's something you do when you're 18 or 20, 22, but those bonds, like you said earlier, we carry those for the rest of our lives, and those friendships, and they rekindle quickly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very quickly. It's amazing what a beer will do to help rekindle, right?
Exactly. All right. So we've got your daughter at Ohio State. She's in Fisher. She's a member of Kappa Delta sorority. Do you have other children?
I have one other daughter. I'm proud to say she's going to the University of Toledo. She's going to be a doctor of pharmacy. She's part of the PharmD program. She will be a freshman in fall. And then she also is going to be she's going to try out for the dance team. I think she's fantastic. She'll make it. Tryouts are next week, so we'll see what happens. But she's all in on Toledo, man. I'll tell you, she had her pick. Ohio State, other schools. And when she went to Toledo, not because of me or my wife, she just fell in love with the campus and that program. I mean, I don't think people understand the strength of the Toledo farm and the reputation of people all over the place. Like, yeah, that's a great pharmacy school. Like, how the heck do you know that? It's amazing. So we're thrilled about that.
Yeah, it's great. The pharmacy college at the University of Toledo has been outstanding forever, and they go over the top to welcome their students in. They just do a great job of immersing their students in immediately, like your daughter, in the summer before she even gets to campus. They're bringing them in and they're immersing them in, and that's a very bright spot at the University of Toledo. So, well, it'll be great to have her here. Well, she'll be buried with the dance team, but we'll have to get her go through and take a look at the sororities and get her immersed into Greek life. You never know; maybe she'll become an AOPI and become her mother's sister. Right?
I mean, don't get me wrong; those two love each other, but given the dynamics of my children, they would do the opposite. They might ask their mother, like, "Hey, which sorority did you hate the most?" I'm going to go that way. Yeah,
no. That's the way it is. I get that. That happens. That's part of the dynamics of having children, right?
Totally, gotta love it.
All right, so it's clear then that you're definitely a proud father. I can feel that.
Thrilled, yeah, thrilled. Did something right, Rick, and that's the number one thing your legacy was. Somebody once told me, no one remembers you were in the office on Saturday or flew, overseas for business and we're gone for 2 weeks, except your children. They will be the ones that will remember that. Your customer don't remember that. Your people at your business don't remember that, but your children will. So, the focus of being a good father is something that stays forefront, especially for people who aren't home every day, for people who are on the road. It's not the easiest thing. So you got to figure out a way to do that. And hopefully, as these kids grow up and they're going to be successful, hopefully that did wear off a little bit on them.
It's very true. So if you could go back to college right now and sit down with a group of freshmen, what advice would you give them about going into their freshman year?
Well, if they're going to Toledo, avoid the Stein. I know it's no longer there, but yeah, that's a funny one. No, this is what I would say. I think there's two things I really do. As I tell my daughters, number one, and this sounds so simple, but it gets violated every day of the week. Just go to class. Like, look, there's so much time in the day to go do whatever the heck you want to do. Just go to class, because that is what's going to help you get through that class, not cramming, studying in one day. So just go to class. Come on, just go. Number one. Number two, get involved. Right. Clubs, organizations, fraternity, sorority, whatever it is, the more you can do, it's going to well round you for life. If you're just a person that's going to sit in a dorm room and party and play video games, that type of stuff, it ain't going to help you do anything. the more you're involved, it's not about the involvement and looking good on a resume. The people you meet that are also part of those groups, I guarantee you down the road, you might do business with them, you might work with them, you might find partnerships down the road, or it just might be someone who might introduce you to someone. The networking game isn't 1+1. It is literally 1+3 equals like 9, right? Like it's
Right.
amazing stuff. Get involved because that network will be insane. If we had LinkedIn back in the day, I don't know what it would have done for our career, but I think it would have tremendously helped it. LinkedIn, I think, is incredible today. Man, I wish we had that when we were getting out of college.
Well said. I mean, that's just great advice. Before we move to wrap up the conversation, I mean, what advice do you give there's some young entrepreneurs listening in right now on this podcast and the audience? If you could go back, I mean, what would you do different? I mean, what advice would you give them on what they should do right away as an entrepreneur if they're thinking about it?
Yeah, you know what's funny, Rick? I've always hated the word entrepreneur because every time you say it, people are like, "All right, here's a guy with about 9 ideas, and he's
Yeah.
got none of them off the ground, and no one's
Yeah.
making." So I
Yeah.
hear you on that, but I appreciate the term. Look, at the end of the day, whatever the idea, whatever the concept is, whether it's amazing, whether it's okay, whatever it is, but if you believe in it, just develop a business around it, right? You got to make sure there's product market fit. You got to make sure somebody wants to buy this thing. You got to make sure you can literally control costs, especially if you raise capital. And I read a lot because I fly on the plane a lot. John D. Rockefeller had a great quote. It's not about how big they got and how amazing they were. He said he got rich by controlling costs. And that's a thing, I think, when you look at all these unicorns that have raised, millions and tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, in some cases, billions, they just spend. Some of those old ways of controlling costs are so important because in downshifts, like we've seen, the economy's fine right now, but you never know, right? Especially in election year with inflation, you never know. You can't cut your way to growth. You got to continue to grow, but you can watch your cost to grow. And I think entrepreneurs just think we're going to raise capital. We're just going to buy a, refrigerator full of beer and a foosball table and all this stuff. Like, no. There's nothing wrong with having some zeros in the bank, my friend. Hopefully starting with a 1 or 2, but having some zeros after that. You got to have a capital reserve. So I think with entrepreneurs, whatever the idea is, great. Whatever the product market fit is, you got to have one. But you got to be able to grow the business and you got to be able to control costs. If you do that, you can be extraordinarily successful.
Right. That's great advice. Well, I tell you what, Tony, we could carry this conversation on, but there's so many fascinating things I'd love to explore with you. And I think the audience is probably as intrigued as I am about all the fun things you've done in your career. And I'd love to hear about those mistakes too, because that's where we learn, right? Those
Got a lot of them, buddy. Got a lot of them.
Me too. Well, first and foremost, thank you.
Thank
For
you.
making time, Tony. I appreciate. I know you're real busy, and I appreciate you sharing your journey with us. And so, thank you.
Yeah, Rick, you're just as busy, so thank you for having me on this. And go Rockets, baby.
So that's it for this episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. Now it's time to launch connections to ignite your success. And the key question is this: are you ready? To schedule a Rocket Networker training program or keynote speech, go to rocketnetworker.com. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?